Hello, this is an assessment of a Saville upright piano that's made in the 1920s, I think. And so just having a look at the work that could improve it. And first of all, the outside of the piano, we can certainly repolish that. And there's some mahogany, quite a plain mahogany, but it would look very startling if it was repolished, or just make it good. Obviously repolishing means stripping it all down and redoing it, so it's probably about 40 hours work, so quite expensive. The top lid here is definitely the worst for wear and has some rings on there from cups. So trying to make it good will be possible. Redoing the whole piano will be much more satisfactory, obviously. And the top, this is the fall, which we call the part that closes down the lid over the keys, and that's also quite damaged, really. Looking at the way the music stand's dug into the casework, it's actually extremely difficult to hide those lines from our experience, because if you try and repolish out here, you end up with a patch here and it doesn't blend in with the rest of it. So really, really difficult to get that right. Now looking at the key tops, they are not so ivory, but they're quite pleasant to look at. They're not damaged in any way, which is good news. Now you can see at the back of this key here, there's a bit of felt missing, which has been eaten by moth. We'll see plenty of that inside the piano too, and another bit there. So if you've got a piano and you can see that, it's probably been eaten by moth. Also the felt around the pedals is a little moth-eaten, they're not too bad. Looking at the pedals, you can see that there's not been a huge amount of use of this pedal, which probably means the piano's not been used a lot. Now Saville is, as far as I know, didn't have their own factory. They're like plenty of, maybe they made the cases, for instance, and got the frames made. So maybe they did. It's difficult to know. I haven't researched enough, and I just found the name Saville on very old pianos as well, dating before 1900. So looking at this, actually, when we looked at the tuning pins here and to see if they were tight, that's the first thing to do. They're very small tuning pins. There's lots of good features on this piano. It's a very well made frame. It seemed to be quite stable. Within itself, the tuning is pretty stable, but it's 5 beats flat. But when I mean stable, it's the octaves are stayed in roughly. It's out of tune, obviously, but it's not desperately. And the strings here, there's a problem possibly with the bass strings breaking here, but I think if we took them down and then back up and perhaps lubricated here as well before we tuned it, then very unlikely to break strings, although because they've been broken in the past, you're very, very wary that's going to happen again, wary that it might happen again. But down here we're all right, and let's listen to the tone. Well, that's a good bass tone. Around there, tenor's not too strong really. Those strings matching in reasonably, some of them, but a bit patchy, and quite a contrast on the break point. But there are aspects that are very well made on this piano, and looking at the hammers, I said they're not that much wear, as most of the hammer's still there. It might have been lightly refaced at some stage, but most of that hammer is still there, original hammer. So that's a sign that the piano's not been used. Let's look at the damper regulation, and that's not too bad either. It's lifting off well, and to the key, well, should be about halfway normally, depending on how heavy you want the touch. The damper springs are very, very light there, which is okay. They seem to be damping all right, and down here, much heavier springs, which is what you'd expect and you need. There's obviously improvements to be made. Now somebody's replaced the tapes here. That's good news, because if we do have to take any off and put them back on, they hopefully won't break. I'd slightly lubricate the tapes so that when you pull them off, and you can put them back on without breaking, because they tend to break across here. But that's hopeful anyway. And we certainly need to take some off, because if you listen to this, around here, hear the clicking noise. And that clicking noise is caused by the felt behind the jack is missing, and that's been eaten by moth. It's very, very common. That one is all right, so that's going back and not making any noise. This one, the felt's missing. As the jack goes back, there's no felt behind there. If you can see that, there's a felt behind that one, no felt behind there. There's about 15 of them, I think, but obviously you have to treat this for moth as well, just in case the moth's still active. One falling out there. There's another one, another 3. So quite a few of them. So we'll have to take all the tapes off to look at those felts and stick them back on, maybe put a whole new set. By the way, when you put new felts on, they must be the same thickness. If not, the jack's at the wrong angle and then the touch feels too heavy. Ideally, if anything, slightly thicker, so that will, as long as the jack's not going to come out when it's being played, they should be reasonably thick, those felts. And as I say, probably have to renew them all. Now somebody's already renewed the felts under the keys. That's chalk down there, often put on. I don't think that's French chalk, that's just ordinary chalk, probably just to, it was a system, people put that on to stop the piano getting too humid when it was in store. Very often it was not so much done these days. That's a new felt there on the back rail, centre rail, new felts I think, and front rail as well, so they've no moth in those, but there is woodworm in the piano too. Looking down the bottom there's woodworm in the corner there, dead spiders as well, spider webs, cobwebs, and a bit of the felt. They haven't damaged the felt there too much. There's a bit of cushion felt that's fallen off the action there. I'm just looking at the strings as well. See how those replacement strings, there's a variety of methods used. That's sort of like a good copy of the old one, and then that's what we call an English eye, where the eye it's easy to get it on and off. That's called a German eye. One up on the English one here, and you can see that's put that way round, that's put that way round. These are tight on, so it's hard to get them on and off. Say German eyes, that's what's often made when people are replacing. Maybe these strings are put on, kind of bought roughly the right size string and then put it on, rather than the one that's been copied exactly as that one has there. You can see the copy, it's the same length as the other one. The other ones vary slightly, not quite sure about that, but these are definitely, it'd be much nicer to have English eyes if you can make them. There's a serial number on the piano there. It's also on the keys, difficult to read. I'll look at them on the keys as well. There's often numbers on keys, but it's not usually related to the actual age of the piano or piano number. But I can read these 11933 there, 11933, 11933, and on that as well. So we can put that number down, but there is no listing of serial numbers of Saville pianos. Inside the top lid here, somebody's had a go at stripping it and sort of given up. So obviously, as I say, we can strip and repolish, but very long job. There's a reasonable amount of lost motion here. You see the way that the catcher there is moving before, or the check is moving before the hammer is. And if you take up that lost motion, it feels an awful lot nicer to play. You get immediate response. So that needs taking up, and that's done with turning these capstans down here. And by the way, if you turn these capstans, they can often break when you try and put the tool inside there to turn them. It's a good idea to make sure they're freed off by taking them out and checking them first before you try turning them. Down here the bass is very echoey. The dampers aren't doing a very good job. They're coming off at the right time, but I think the felt's worn, and also the damper springs are pretty weak. But it might be difficult to get perfect damping on there. I suspect it's partly a design of the piano, but we can certainly improve that a lot. There's a lot of variety in the wedge damping, and also the strings. As I say, they're different strings, and not a perfect match. Not a disaster, but not a perfect match. There's a bit of trimming on the front here, which also needs replacing. It's going to be difficult to get the match in, but do the best we can. So it's an assessment of a 1920s Saville upright piano, and many good aspects to this piano. The frame is very nice, the tuning pins are very tight. The piano has been restored to some extent. There has been quite a bit of moth in it, and the keys the felts under the keys have been replaced. There's still some felts missing, some jack felts in the middle of the action, so it needs taking apart. And obviously the piano needs treating for moth just in case. Now, in terms of what to do on this piano, I think it's a question of prioritising, seeing what's the most important. So obviously the regulation, so it feels nice, the felts that need replacing, and then it'll be nice to work on the case as well to get it looking very smart. I may have missed something else in that brief resume, but hopefully covered in the rest of the video. Tone of the piano. the touch is a bit heavy actually. I think we need to try and look into that. But generally, apart from this tenor area where the strings have been replaced, the hammers are not too brilliant there either. But now here we get a very, very strong lush bass, which is nice. And I think once it's pitched raised and giving some loving care and attention, the piano will come back to life. It's definitely worth working on, I would say. Thank you very much for listening.